What is up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast. Setting the pace, and the Indiana Pacers are in the playoffs once again, facing the Milwaukee Bucks. And here to talk with Facci and I about this upcoming series from a national perspective, it is Keith Smith. So, Keith, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's funny. I wore my Pacers light blue and dark blue for you guys today. I appreciate that wasn't planned. I just had that on, but whatever. Does it feel like every time you go through these chunks where it's like you play the same team every year in the playoffs, it's like, I know it isn't, but it feels like this is like the 10th time we've had Pacers Bucks. And I know that's not the case, but it just kind of feels like that.
It really feels like we played them like 20 times since last year recruiting this. And we're not used to having rivals. It kind of went away for a little bit, but the rivalry definitely feels back.
Yeah, and that's fun, right? That's what makes the playoffs fun once we get to that point.
Yeah, Keith, I will say one of the most interesting things about this playoff series compared to last year is the Pacers pretty much have the same roster with a few additional guys like a Ben Mathurin, Jarris Walker potentially. But if you look at this Bucks team, it's a totally different look. I mean, if you're looking at their starting five from last year's playoffs to this year's playoffs, if Dame's not ready to go for game one, the only common denominator there is Brook Lopez. So I think that it's going to be a really fascinating series because this Bucks team is built a lot different than how they were built last year. And I'm just curious, from what you've seen from this version of the Bucks, especially without Dame, what are you kind of expecting them to do against Indiana?
Yeah, this year it feels like they play with a lot more size kind of across the board. I know whenever you're starting Lopez and Giannis, that's already bigger than a lot of teams start at the 4 and the 5. But then you have Kuzma. Taurean Prince right now is playing shooting guard. He's got to be one of the biggest shooting guards in the league there. And then Ryan Rollins is not a small guy for a point guard either. He's got to be about 6'3", 6'4". It feels like, though, more Giannis reliant than ever. Obviously, no Dame, like that's going to be the case. But then Chris Middleton's no longer there. And Chris Middleton was like the mainstay secondary playmaker guy for so many years with this team, or maybe some lineups he was like the third guy to get the ball. But now that's kind of become Kyle Kuzma. And that's felt like a little bit of a wonky fit. It doesn't feel like it's ever fully gotten there. And that might be one of those things where it takes until next season before that really kind of locks in for those guys to get there. But it just feels like they are very reliant on Giannis more so. Now they have pretty good depth, I think. I think their guys are pretty solid behind them. Doc has really kind of cut down to playing about 8-9 guys in the rotation, and those guys are pretty solid. But yeah, it just, I don't know, not to beat a dead horse, it just feels like it's a lot of Giannis, even more so than usual for this team.
And that's a little bit what scares me, though, because Giannis being selfish, that could be 50 points any given night. So do you think that almost kind of maybe works to Milwaukee's benefit, where if Giannis is going to put up 25 plus shots per night, that he might be able to get whatever he wants? Or is it that, maybe Giannis should be more of a facilitator, get, pass to those open shooters, and if Milwaukee can hit some shots, they should be just fine? Like, do you think that the more Giannis reliant approach actually works out better for them?
Yeah, I think it certainly can. I think letting him really be the full engine that drives, at least you know who you are as a team. You kind of know, all right, it's not Dame hasn't really had a possession, and if you trips down the floor, so we got to make sure this is his possession while Giannis just kind of hangs out in the corner and waits and those kind of things. But yeah, if it's Giannis all game long, that's where it puts a lot of pressure on like Pascal Siakam, Obi Toppin, probably Aaron Nesmith a little bit too, because sometimes Giannis still struggles with the smaller, quicker guys. If they're basically somewhat strong enough, that's questionable. Anybody's really strong enough to handle them. But if they're a little more fearless, which Nesmith is, right? Like he'll put his face in there and take an elbow, and he's not going to worry about it. He's just going to play. That's where you just got to be careful with the fouls, right? Because you do not want to be in a position where you're midway through the second quarter. It's like Siakam has his third foul, and now we're in the top, and now he has his third foul. And next thing you know, it's like Jarris Walker is taking a turn, and now James Johnson is randomly in the game because we had nobody left to give fouls. Like it just gets that's the thing you always have to worry about when Giannis is going to be Giannis. Now, if he is taking pull-up jump shots, And if he's content to get off the ball and then just kind of hang out at the arc, well, that's a huge win. And that's what I do think could work in the Pacers' advantage, where it's going to be scary when he's really drive, and he's creating everything. But he's not 25 years old anymore, right? Like you're going to wear him out a little bit. Where's that going to go? We've seen him break down in the playoffs before. So what's that going to look like as well for him when he has to carry such a big load? But yeah, there is a part of me that's like, I don't know that it's great to be like, this one guy's going to do everything, because he's also an unselfish player too, right? He's not going to force bad shots and other stuff, where sometimes when it's a score first guy, you're like, all right, let him get his 40 on, 35 shots and we'll live with it, because that's how it goes. And we'll just worry about everybody else. Giannis isn't going to do that. If he gets 35 shots, he's probably going to score more like 60.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a great point you talk about there, because if you go back and watch the game where Tyrese Halliburton hit the and one 3-pointer in front of the Bucks bench, the Pacers did a really good job of kind of building a wall to stop Giannis, which they've kind of implemented that strategy here over the last couple of years. And so trying to kind of build that wall to stop Giannis, but then he's been very happy to be a facilitator. But I think a lot of it is going to be interesting there, because like Facci mentioned, if Dame Lillard's able to go, who else is kind of orchestrating the offense, and are the others, I guess you could say, going to be able to hit enough shots in the postseason? Because look, in the regular season, it's different, but in the postseason, guys get tired, stuff like that. So do you think that there's maybe a possibility you see the Pacers kind of build that wall against Giannis, slow him down, he becomes a facilitator, and now the Kuzmas and the Princes, they're not hitting the shots that maybe they were hitting in the regular season, which really kind of mucks up the Milwaukee offense?
Yeah, I think this is where Rick Carlisle can get a little funky with some of the things that he wants to do, especially defensively, where maybe Miles Turner isn't the one guarding Brook Lopez. Maybe you put Nesmith on him, because Lopez very rarely now is he going to go get down on the block and punish you with the smaller defender. And then that way, Turner, if he's guarding Prince or Kuzma, and you're willing to say, hey, if those guys hit 5-6 3-pointers and we lose, we'll tip our cap and dare you to do it again in the next game. That leaves Turner in the help position, right? And you need that guy in the help position. I think the teams that have been successful against Giannis in the past can kind of put enough size on him to kind of hold him up a little bit. Then you've got that other guy coming over to help kind of just make things a little bit more difficult. Like I promise I'm not going to make everything a Boston related point here, but that's where they've been so successful, because whether it was Horford could kind of hold him up a little bit, or Smart, or Holiday, now that they've had Holiday, or Jaylen Brown at times, and then Horford coming in behind. Now it's Porzingis coming in behind. That's what you need to be able to do. You need to be able to hold them up a little bit. And then I think the other thing is the Pacers they've played fast, but it's not the breakneck speed that it was last year. I know it's been faster as the year has gone along. And that's where I think pushing pace can really help too. Because I think for them, if you could kind of turn it more into an up and down game, that just plays in Indiana's favor a lot more than it does in Milwaukee's. Again, because they're going to be so reliant on Giannis to do so many different things. So I think you're right. Build that wall, make him work, and then make him work on the other end, right? That's the other way too. Maybe you pick up a couple cheap fouls on him where he's having to do stuff, because he's got to do a lot defensively for this Milwaukee team too to get there.
You mentioned about Indiana being able to get out and run. And while Indiana lost the season series against Milwaukee, the game that they did win, they beat Milwaukee in the fast break points 31-3. Overall, in the 4 games they won, they were plus 52 in fast break points. So that really is what Indiana needs to be able to get out and do. Do you think that they can tire out Milwaukee? Because we have seen a tired Giannis before last year, where it felt like it was harder to keep up. Like you mentioned, Indiana not playing as fast as they were last year, but I think it's probably a little bit more of the league catching up to an extent. Do you think that that is their way for maybe to get Milwaukee tired, maybe to get some rack up some fouls, anything of that sort?
Yeah, I think here's where Indiana can really take control of the game, is by getting played their way. Get it up and down, move the ball, keep it going. The key thing to be able to do that, right, you have to get the ball. And the big thing there is you got to be able to rebound. Now, here's the good news. The Bucks are the worst offensive rebounding team in the entire NBA. They don't get to the offensive board. Giannis doesn't do that at this stage in his career. Lopez is generally 25, 30 feet from the basket. Their other guys, are not very good offensive rebounders. even like Bobby Portis, who plays with pretty good energy, he's not doing a lot of that. So if you're Indiana, who's not always the best defensive rebounding team, that changes some, right? Because you can get that. You could get those rebounds and get out and key it. Because a lot of people think of pushing pace and fast breaks as being you forced a turnover and you went the other way, or you block a shot and it goes out and you're off and running. It's just as much of you got to stop, you rebound and you pushed. And that's where, too, for Indiana, outside of Miles Turner, I don't think anybody, and then once you get into like the backup centers who are more pure fives, nobody else on the team isn't somebody who can get the ball and go, or at least take a few dribbles and get it moving up the floor. And I think that's something I would be looking to do, is really running off everything, because the more easy offense you can steal, the better, because it's just going to make life a lot easier for you.
Yeah, I would say that the last Bucks-Pacers game we saw on a Saturday night in Milwaukee, the Bucks ended up winning that one. Giannis fouled out with about 2 minutes left to go, and the Pacers decided to pull Miles Turner and go with Obi Toppin at the small ball 5, and they found a lot of success with that group right there. And I think we've kind of seen Rick Carlisle utilize Obi Toppin as that small ball 5 throughout the regular season, and even last year in the playoffs some. So Thomas Bryant was someone they picked up who had a very nice, month or two when they first picked him up, but he's kind of regressed since then. So as they kind of have to shore up this rotation, do you think that with the Bucks being this big, they can afford to not play Thomas Bryant and go a little bit smaller with Obi at the 5 for the majority of their rotation?
I think in a lot of the non-Giannis minutes, you can definitely get away with that, because the Bucks don't have anybody who's going to hurt you going to the rim that way when Giannis isn't out there. When Giannis is out there, that's when, if Turner's not out there, you probably want to go with more Bryant, just at least its size. And if nothing else, that's 6 fouls, right?
Yeah.
You have 12 fouls on your bench between him and Tony Bradley. You don't want to be giving fouls unnecessarily, but you don't want to be giving up layups with Giannis, right? Like, at least make them work. And I'm not saying let's not go 1980s, 90s where it's like hammer this guy onto the floor and stuff, but make him feel it a little bit, right? Like, you don't have to be dirty, but just if you're going to give a foul, give a real foul. No touch fouls, no brush fouls, no fouls 40 feet from the hoop, or God forbid in the backcourt, chasing for no reason. Those are the ones that, I mean, if Rick Carlisle had any hair left, he'd lose it all off of that, right? Those drive coaches crazy. But like that's where I think that's where those two guys would be impactful from a standpoint of at least they can give you a little bit more size. But in the non-Giannis minutes, yeah, I'd be content to play Toppin at the 5, or even Siakam at the 5 if you need to. Go that way, play smaller, probably play really fast, and it's just not going to hurt you.
Yeah, how much last year, looking at this playoff matchup, we talked about Brook Lopez, only real constant from last year in Milwaukee, but Chris Middleton was an absolute certified killer last year against the Pacers in the playoffs. He averaged 25 points per game, 9 boards, 5 assists, did it on nearly 50% shooting. That was a guy who was hitting big shots. Milwaukee has good shooters. You have your Gary Trent Jr.'s and your AJ Greens and Taurean Prince guys that could be shooting 40% or more. But when you need an absolute bucket, if it's not Giannis, do you think now the loss of Middleton could be something that could definitely affect them when they need a shot, not a layup, but an actual jumper?
Yeah, it really is a killer, because then if Lillard's not going to be able to go, and we don't have an indication he's definitely not going to be, but we certainly don't have an indication he is going to play. Your next best guy is probably Kyle Kuzma at this point. And I like, not to be mean, but when's the last time Kyle Kuzma played a meaningful game? It's been an awful long time since the bubble, right? Probably. So it's like, where are we at with this? Like, do you feel comfortable in the fourth quarter of a playoff game saying, go get us a bucket? He'll get the shot. I don't know if he'll get the bucket. That's the problem. He might get the shot off. I don't know how much he's going to make it. So that's where it becomes a little bit more of an issue. And then you're talking about guys who are a little bit overmatched for that role, right? Gary Trent Jr., good shooter. Like you said, AJ Green, really good shooter. Those guys are dependent players. They need somebody setting them up. I think what Milwaukee should do a lot more often, if it's like we need a bucket, go put Brook Lopez on the box and say, go do what you used to do. Because he's still pretty effective down there. Problem is, you just can't go to it over and over and over again. And that's going to be the issue. I think in the end, what will swing this series is if Indiana can keep Giannis relatively in check, in that he may average 40, but if it's a tough 40 that he had to really work for, you're going to feel pretty good about your chances to win, because I just don't know who else creates buckets for them. Where for the Pacers, there's like 3-4 guys that I feel pretty good are either going to create a good look for themselves or a good look for a teammate.
Tyrese Halliburton has been playing at a great level, at a high level since the All-Star break. I think him not being named an All-Star, getting some time to kind of re-energize himself, it was just big for him. So the way that he's playing now, do you see the Bucks really having a defender out there that can slow him down a little bit? Because last year we saw Tyrese, it was his first playoff series. Patrick Beverley was guarding him, and Patrick Beverley, 35 years old, was harassing him quite a bit. But, I think Tyrese still wasn't fully 100% healthy, but Tyrese looks like a totally different player to where he was last year. So what are you expecting from him? And does Milwaukee have anybody they could throw out to really make this difficult for him?
You've got a couple different guys they can kind of throw at him. I think Ryan Rollins will probably get the first look at him just to try to make him work, try to make him make it difficult to even get into things. And then Rollins is pretty good as an off-ball guy, sticking with guys there. Gary Trent Jr. has always been a pretty solid defensive player. I think he's a tad overrated for what he really is, but solid. I think he'll get some looks at him. I will not be surprised if Taurean Prince gets some opportunities, especially if it's one where Halliburton is hurting them as a scorer. Just throw a little bit more size on him and make him have to work a little bit that way. I think you could see that happen as well, but that's a tough matchup for Milwaukee. It's maybe easier without Dame, because Dame was probably going to end up on Nembhard, just because you're probably not putting him on Halliburton, so that part's a little bit easier. And then I think for Halliburton, he has to be very willing to shoot pull-up jump shots off the dribble, because they're going to play Lopez in the drop. That's even what it's not quite as extreme as it was under Budenholzer, under Doc Rivers, but it's still quite a bit of drop coverage. And he just has to be willing to take, whether it's pull-up threes, pull-up mid-rangers, whatever it is. And I feel like that's sometimes where Halliburton's natural unselfishness works against him, because there's times when it's like, man, I've taken the last 4 shots. I need to get other guys involved. There's going to be times where it's like, no, what you need to do is take the next 4 shots too, because you have it going, and that's the best shot for us.
Yeah, how much do you think continuity is going to be able to play, a positive impact for the Pacers? Is this starting 5? This is the starting 5 from last year that went on Eastern Conference Finals run. This is a group that now has gelled together for a while. You look at Milwaukee, there's a lot of new faces. There are guys that came in at the deadline, guys that came in at the beginning of the year. This Pacers team, I just felt like has been so consistent. They are healthy. You know what your role is. You're now technically adding a Benedict Mathurin to this group because he didn't play in last year's playoffs. How much do you think that consistency can really make a big difference when you go on a playoff run?
Huge. When you look at Indiana's roster, if you pull up their basketball reference page, a lot of dudes played 70-plus games. A lot of guys. I think the only rotation regular who didn't was Nesmith, or somebody else might have played in the 60s, but everybody was mostly there. Nesmith's the only one who missed considerable amount of time. And I kind of say now, if you play 70-plus games, you played a full season, right? Yeah. You were there, because there's always the rest games or I rolled an ankle and I had to miss a couple games or whatever. So that's huge for them. And I love what you said. They know exactly who they are. And there's times with this team, and I don't think Carlisle will deviate from it too much, where it's I don't even think he needs to go tell TJ McConnell to check in, when he checks in, because he knows about 7 minutes into the first quarter, I'm checking in the game. And he could probably, I always think Jerry Sloan back I'm probably dating myself. You guys were probably barely.
Jerry Sloan was a legend in the league for a long time.
I know you know who he is, but I just don't know how much you watched this. When he had John Stockton and Howard Isley was John Stockton's backup, Howard Isley at the 4-minute mark of every first quarter, Jerry Sloan didn't even tell him. He just got up and put himself into the game for Stockton. Stockton played the first 8 minutes of the first and third quarters. Isley came in, then Isley played the final 4 minutes and then played about the first. I think it was about 3-4 minutes of the second quarter, and then Stockton came back in to close. that's kind of almost what you see with the Pacers a lot. Like guys just, I'm not saying they're checking themselves in the game, but I think they kind of know, all right, this is when I go in and I'm going to go in. And that leads to that, or grows out of that continuity, being together, guys being available, mostly having your guys most of the year. That's absolutely huge. And that's going to be big too, because just then other things that are, they seem like little things, but they're really actually important big things, where I love when Halliburton, like, it's like an NFL QB thrown to a spot, because he just knows the guy's going to be there. Might not be there when he lets it go, but he knows the guy's going to be there. And that's huge. That only comes from playing together a lot.
You talked about making us defend on the opposite side of the court. Obviously, nobody's going to do offensively, going to be in control of that team's offense. But defensively, over the last couple of games that I remember, he was mostly drawing the Pascal Siakam matchup. And so with Siakam kind of being the Pacers all-star this year, and potentially you could say he was the best player on the team for the entirety of the season, how do you think Pascal can maybe work Giannis on that end to really kind of make him exhaust himself defensively?
Yeah, that's where it's big that Indiana can play, even in those, if they go to those small ball lineups too, you can play 5 out and really space the floor. And that puts Giannis on an island. And again, he's not 25-year-old Giannis. Still, a guy's incredible. Don't get me wrong. But he is not somebody you want picking up 25 feet from the basket, defending off the dribble. And you certainly don't want it having to happen 10, 15, 20 times per game in the playoffs when he has to carry such a heavy offensive load. So that's the thing. And Giannis, I think, too, he has these tendencies at times when he is defending on ball and guys who can create off the dribble, he will pick up fouls. That is a good way to kind of get him potentially in a little bit of foul trouble. You know he's going to run into a couple charges every game. Like, that's just going to be a thing that happens. That's where I would look at Nesmith, McConnell, Nembhard. Those guys will get in his way. You know, they're going to feel it probably the rest of the night and the next morning when they wake up. But they'll take that charge. And that's where I think you get a couple of those. You get a couple of cheapies because he's defending off the bounce with Siakam. That's huge. And then if it's not him, if they're like, we got to kind of protect Giannis, so we're going to put him on Nesmith and let him drift a little. And it kind of like the opposite, like I said, for the Pacers defending the Bucks. If Aaron Nesmith hits 6 3-pointers and we lose, so be it. It is what it is. We move on to the next game. But then who's covering Siakam? Kuzma? Prince? If Prince has to pick up on Halliburton at all, like that's the issue. The Bucks have a lot of attack points on their defense, and that's where it can become a major problem for them.
Yo, Keith, how much do you really look into the regular season series? Like, Milwaukee won 3-1. Look, it's not great. I mean, last year the Pacers owned Milwaukee in the regular season, but at the same point, things do change. Look, we mentioned probably no Dame. At times when Indiana played Milwaukee, there was no Nembhard in one game. Nesmith missed another game. They played on back-to-backs where Milwaukee was a little bit more fresh. There's not going to be any back-to-backs this time around. Like I said, we don't know if Dame's going to be out there. So how much do you look into what the regular season series was when you go into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think you look more for indicators than anything else. And like an indicator could be, and I apologize, I don't have this number in front of me, but if it was like the Bucks mauled the Pacers on the offensive glass, like that's the only team they went to the offensive glass on, well, I would look at it and say, well, that'll probably continue, right? Like that happened. There's probably a reason for that with that. But if you go back and look and it's like, man, Damian Lillard gave these guys the business. And then if he's not going to play, well, what good is that to me? Now, the nice thing is neither one of these teams changed drastically at the trade deadline. Like to the Western Conference series, the Lakers and Timberwolves, I think their first 3 games were before the Luka trade. So we get nothing out of those. Those mean nothing now, right? The Lakers are a completely different team than they were during those first 3 games. So that's where I think you have to be very you just have to be willing to look for certain things, but you can't get overly focused on anything. I mean, a year ago, everybody thought the Suns were going to take care of the Timberwolves because they swept them 4-0, had a relatively easy time with them. And what happened? Timberwolves swept the Suns out 4-0. Like, just sometimes the regular season means something, and then there's other times where it's like it doesn't mean a whole lot. You got to really look into it. I'll be honest, I have not looked at every box score yet. I will before, I have to pick this series later in the week. And then when I get into it, yeah, maybe something will pop out that I'm like, yeah, that actually looks kind of repeatable. But other than that, it's a data point, but I don't get overly focused on it.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say if you look back at last year's regular season, the Pacers they won 4-1 against the Bucks, and I think most Bucks fans would say, and we talked about it with our Bucks podcast that we did with the preview with Ty Windish from the Eurostep podcast. We were just basically honest plays in last year's playoffs. Do we really think the Pacers win that 1 in 6? I think you can make a strong case they probably don't. So I think it could be kind of flipped this year where the Pacers maybe didn't win the regular season, but they're fully healthy heading into the postseason, which could make a difference. But curious your thoughts on who could maybe potentially be an X factor for both Indiana and Milwaukee in this series.
Yeah, good question. I'm going to say on the Milwaukee side, I think it's Taurean Prince. He's had a really good season. I don't know how many people realize he shot 44% from 3 this year, which is like incredible for a guy who's like a 6'8", forward really that has been pressed into having to play the 2. I think he also gives them just more size you can throw on Halliburton if you need to. If he's really good defensively and he can hit shots, that's going to go a long way towards Milwaukee winning the series. On the Pacers side, I think it's for me, I think it's Mathurin. Can he just punish the Bucks defense on those second units where it's like, everybody can match this guy. He came out and got 15, 20 points, whatever it is. And we just didn't have anybody that we could do anything with him. I think that will be huge for them because that's something that, like you said, when you look at what didn't we have a year ago, they didn't have that, right? So if you've got him kind of going, that makes it really tough because for as good as the Pacers offense can be, they will go through these weird droughts at times. And then I think he's the guy who can kind of save them from that. Now, there are times he's the guy who starts those because he gets a little ball happy. He starts like, I'm going to get some shots up. This is my time to go. It's like the old, I got this Jordan Clarkson tweet that gets shared around. Like that's what it feels like. But it's also, that's why guys like that are special, right? Because on the nights where they got this, right? And there's probably at some point in this playoff run, he'll win a game for the Pacers and probably at some point it'll be a big part of why they lose one. Right. But that's what you get with those guys. That's kind of how it goes.
No, it's true. And look, we're all really excited. I mean, there's just definitely been this big belief amongst Pacer Nation. Like Mathurin's built for this. He's going to come around. Like when the playoffs start, I'm like, this is going to be the guy who's going to be able to go down there.
Not going to be afraid of the moment.
He's not going to be afraid. And he's going to be someone that's going to put pressure on the rim, get to the free throw line in a way that many other guys in Indiana just don't do. But I want you to kind of fill in the blank. Indiana wins this series if
they can win the possession battle. I think that's going to be huge. We already talked about it. Bucks are not they're the worst offensive rebounding league in the team. Rebounding team in the league. I think if Indiana can just steal a few more possessions. Neither team's really big on turning the ball over, but the Bucks don't really force many turnovers either. So I think that's a real chance there where the Bucks don't force turnovers. Indiana doesn't give it away a lot, so they should be able to do okay there. You can steal a few more possessions just by getting a couple more offensive boards, and I think they've got like the athletes who will go get him, right? I know he hates the nickname Crash, but we know Nesmith's going to come flying in there, and he'll save a couple possessions that they shouldn't have, right? So he'll do that, and then Siakam's sneaky good on there. Toppin can be it's weird. Obi Toppin's like not a very good defensive rebounder, but he can be a really good offensive rebounder at times. That's where I even think Brian or Bradley can come up kind of big because especially too when you're so locked in on got to defend Miles Turner 30 feet from the hoop, got to defend him, then it's the other guy they can kind of sneak in. So they can win the possession game each game and get 5, 6, 10 more shots up. I think that's absolutely huge. And that's 5, 6, 10 more after you account for what I think will probably be a free throw imbalance, a little bit more towards the Bucks side.
I wonder why that will be.
We've all been on the other side of that one, right?
Yes. I mean, and then you get to count 12, 13 seconds before the shot's actually released from the free throw line. So we'll see. I kind of want to put the over-under on maybe 2 free throw violations are called in this series if it goes 7 games. But you said
I would heavily bet the under.
You think it'll be
I'll
under
heavily
2?
bet the under.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I will ask you this. I know you said you were kind of like getting ready for your predictions, but I guess which way are you leaning right now towards in this series?
Yeah, I don't generally like the road team in 6. Do like the team that'll be on the road in game 6. Just because it feels weird. Like it almost feels like if you're at home in a game 6, you're gonna force a game 7. But that's what my gut tells me is Pacers in 6. I just think they've got too much for Milwaukee. If we find out tomorrow Damian Lillard's gonna play, and if he can be Damian Lillard, I think I'd still pick Pacers, but I pick Pacers in 7. But without Dame in the 6 is really that's my undying respect for Giannis. Like he's just so tough. But I just don't know how they're gonna score enough to keep up with Indiana. I just can't see it unless they get incredibly hot from 3 with a whole bunch of different guys knocking them down, which certainly could happen. They have some really good shooters on that team. But that's where, if I'm Rick Carlisle, it's going to be, all right, stay hugged up. Stay hugged up on your guy. If Giannis is beating us getting downhill, so be it. Maybe we do dare him to score 50 and we make sure we stay tight with everybody else. And it's not Giannis got 35 and kicked it out for 10 3-pointers. And next thing you know, we're in trouble. That's why I just don't know how they're going to score enough to keep up with Indiana. I think Indiana will. I just trust their offense to put points on the board a lot more than Milwaukee's.
Indiana's been a great home team. Love the fact that they have home court. Feeling great about it. If they can come out there, handle business in game 1, I think that confidence will translate into game 2. Keith, definitely appreciate you coming back on. Please tell everybody where they can find you on social media and some of the awesome content you're always putting out, especially this time of the year with the playoffs.
Yeah, you can find me at Keith Smith NBA on Twitter, same handle on Blue Sky. I'm not really active anywhere. I have the accounts just so nobody else has them, but I'm not really active anywhere else. But you can find my written work on Spot Track. We're doing our off-season previews, so for anybody listening who's like, my team stinks and they're out, yeah, I'll be covering them pretty soon too. Eventually we cover all 30. So, and we do them by order of elimination. So let's hope we're not covering the Pacers for a while yet. That would be kind of nice. So then you can find that, and then you can find the NBA front office show with Trevor Lane and I. We'll be going deep on all the playoff series. We just did our play-in tournament preview today. That was today's episode on Monday that posted. You can find that either over on YouTube or you can find it anywhere. Podcast, every podcast player out there, NBA front office show. Subscribe, listen that way.
Absolutely, Keith. And I will say this: I know we even maybe hinted at talking about some other NBA playoff stuff with you on this pod, but we got so deep in the weeds on the Pacers and this and the Bucks. Apologize for not doing that, but I want to ask you quickly.
Yeah,
Western Conference, it's a hot mess outside of OKC. Who do you think is the biggest challenger to the Thunder to come out of the Western Conference as we wrap this one up?
Yeah, I've said all year it's Denver. That's again how much I believe in Jokic. But Jamal Murray, I know he just got back, but him being out for so long and even back didn't look fully like Jamal Murray. I'm very worried about that now. And then obviously firing the coach and all the turmoil that they're going under. This absolutely kills me and disgusts me that I'm even going to say it. Feels like it's the Lakers. That could be there. It's just
ask this question.
It's Luke and LeBron, right? They're just
and it could happen.
They're just going to be tough. But here's where I counter that. I don't think anybody's beating the Thunder. I would take the Thunder over the field by a wide margin. I think it would take for the Thunder to lose. It's either going to be one of those things where I don't know that anybody will ever trust a new regular season darling ever again if they don't get through, or they have a major, major injury. And that's, hopefully that doesn't happen. I just don't see how a team in the West is going to beat them. I think Boston or Cleveland could beat them because I think those are the only other 2 teams on their level. But there's something that tells me Luka and LeBron, they're going to shoot 40 free throws combined in a game, and it's just going to get, super sideways that way. And I kind of hope we don't see that series only because I don't need to watch a free throw shooting contest. If I want to go do that, I'll go down to the Y and watch, the under 10 kids do it. It's just, those games are just not good when it's 9 million free throws, and that's exactly what it will be.
It's going to be interesting. It really is. I'm old school. I'm just like we mentioned, where it's like I need to see the team make it that far. The Thunder, 68 wins. It's unbelievable. It's one of the best records of all time. But given they haven't made that conference finals or anything, I'm still just a little bit hesitant to go all in. But the talent was there. Unbelievable regular season. Now's the fun part where we just wait and see how this all unfolds. So, Keith, I don't think it'll be the last time we'll be seeing you. You always make your rounds back to setting the pace, and we always appreciate you for that. So, until next time, good luck, but not too much luck. We could run into you again. You just never know.
True.
All right, Keith. Well, thank you again for joining us, and make sure you guys follow Keith on Twitter and Blue Sky, Keith Smith NBA, and we will talk to y'all later this week.